Welcome, everybody. My name is Alex Waltz. I'm a planner with Charles County Planning and Growth Management, and tonight is our first public meeting regarding the Indian Head Rail Trail Extension Feasibility Study. And first, a couple housekeeping items. Obviously, you've made it here. This meeting is being hosted on the Zoom platform, and I should mention this meeting is being recorded so that we can post this video on the county's YouTube page and website so that people who are accessing the associated survey and web map later on will be able to view this presentation and understand what they're being asked to do. If you're watching this meeting on your computer, please link your computer audio so that you can hear what's being discussed. If you have any questions during the meeting, feel free to enter them in the chat box, or alternatively, you could email my colleague Beth Groth at her email address, which is posted on the screen here. Also, if you need translation services, those are available by clicking on the interpretation icon at the bottom and then choosing your desired language. Next, I want to talk a little bit about two important buttons on the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. The first, the leftmost button that's highlighted in red is the Manage Participants button. And by clicking on that button, you can open a list of all of the participants in the meeting. And in that participants window, you're able to mute or unmute yourself. And you can also raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. But please, if you're not speaking, keep your line muted so that we can cut down on any background noise. The next button is the chat button. You can see here it's this one further to the right highlighted in red, and clicking on that chat button will allow you to post a comment that can be seen by everybody in the meeting, or alternatively, you could send a comment just to the host. And also, we have enabled closed captioning on this meeting, and to disable that if you don't want to read the captions, I think it's kind of cool. But if you don't want to see that, you can click on the More button right here, this little three dot icon, and you'll see a pop-up that allows you to close the closed captioning if you'd like to. Next, this is completely optional, but if you would like to, please rename yourself according to the convention first name in your neighborhood. To do this, you can either choose the More Options button in the video screen, so that would be in the top right-hand corner, this little blue button with three white dots. You would click on that, and then from the drop-down that appears, choose Rename, or alternatively, once you've opened up the participants window, you can also right-click on your name and then choose the rename option from the dropdown that appears. Again, this is completely optional, but it would be helpful for us to know what neighborhoods are being represented so that we can change our outreach strategy for the next public meeting. I wanted to do a little bit of introduction. The county has hired a consultant team from Tool Design out of their Silver Spring, Maryland office to work on this feasibility study. And from Tool Design, we have Stacy Desai, the project engineer, Kathleen Hayes, a landscape architect, and Daniel Patterson, one of their GIS analysts. And from the Charles County Department of Planning and Growth Management, we have myself, Alex Waltz, I'm a planner 2, my colleague Beth Groth, who's a planner 3, and then one of my other colleagues, Kathy Thompson, who's a planner 4. A little bit of history on this project. The Indian Head Rail Trail was first opened for public use in 2009, and it's a pretty popular trail facility in the county that connects the communities of White Plains and Indian Head. The Three Notch Trail, which is almost exclusively in St. Mary's County, the first phase of that trail opened in 2006, but the county has completed several additional phases since. And a connection between these two pretty popular trail facilities was first brought up once the Indian Head Rail Trail opened, but the first time that it was included in an adopted county plan was in 2012 when Charles County adopted their bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And in that plan, it included, as part of their future plan facilities, a trail connection between these two. More specific to our current effort. Back in 2019, we being Charles County, were awarded a Maryland Bikeways Program grant from the Maryland Department of Transportation. And this grant was awarded so that we could finance the development of a feasibility study that will examine potential trail alignments that could connect the Indian Head Rail Trail and the Three Notch Trail. And tonight is the first of 2 public meetings that we'll be hosting for this study. Tonight, really, what we would like to do is introduce you to this project, get you familiar with the survey and the online web map that we're using to gather input, and also introduce you to a couple different trail facility types that we'd like to get your input on. So tonight we'll be asking you for your input regarding trail facility type preferences, your preferred trail alignments, so where you would like the trail to go, and also your preferences for what destinations you would like the trail to access. So this could be schools, parks, shopping centers, things of that nature. Now moving into a little bit of background about how trails are developed generally. Generally, you could break up trail development into 2 large phases, the design phase and the construction phase. And what we're doing right now is at the very beginning of the design phase, which is a feasibility study. And for this feasibility study, what we're aiming to do is analyze a handful of different trail alignment alternatives and then establish which trail alignment is the most feasible to construct based on the cost, based on the ease of construction, and navigating certain environmental obstacles that we might encounter, and then also the feasibility of constructing it based on the property that the county might have to acquire to construct the trail. After the feasibility study has concluded, we would move into a more detailed design and engineering phase, and then following the design phase, we would move into construction. But the big takeaway from this process really is that the county is still very early in the process, and that's why your input is so important at this stage. Next, a little bit more about where we are in the process of developing the study. So earlier this year, my colleagues and I selected a consultant team, which is Tool Design, to lead the development of this feasibility study. And most recently, the Tool Design team has completed an existing conditions analysis, meaning that they tried to take a look at what's on the ground right now. So they did some accounting of what existing bike facilities are currently on the ground in the county, what parks and schools are nearby that the trail might provide access to, and they also tried to identify steep slopes that might have to be avoided when we're designing and constructing the trail. So right now, we're in the midst of the first of 2 public meetings that we're hosting about this study. And at the conclusion of this public meeting, the tool design team will be developing the alignment alternatives. And this will also include some type of cost analysis. And so they're going to look at a lot of different things, but kind of notably property and right-of-way that might need to be acquired, any water body crossings or bridge structures that might have to be constructed because kind of the path of least resistance, so to speak, between the 2 trailhead points would go through the Sakai Swamp. And then next, following the development of the alignment alternatives, we'll be hosting a second public meeting. Right now, we have it scheduled for February of next year, although it's possible that we could move this to March. And then at the conclusion of that second public meeting, the tool design team will be finalizing the alignments, and they'll develop an assessment and a recommendation of what alignment is most feasible to complete based on the factors that we ask them to consider. So a little bit more on tonight's public meeting. Again, kind of repeating what we had said before, this meeting tonight is to get your input regarding the trail facility types that you most prefer to ride bikes on, potential destinations that you'd like the trail to access, and also get your sense of the alignments that you'd like the trail to take. So a bit later on, tool design staff will introduce you to the online survey and the web mapping tool that we're using to gather feedback about this. And we're asking you to complete the survey and then also use the web map to identify destinations for the trail and draw lines for preferred trail alignments. And so we're going to use the data that we get from the survey and the web map to develop the alignment alternatives for further consideration. So next, really what we want to do is introduce you to a couple of different trail facility types that we're considering for this trail, and get your input on which ones you like to ride bikes on the most. So I'm going to run through a couple different examples of different trail facility types and explain kind of the similarities and differences between them. So this first image is showing what we're calling a rural trail. And as the image shows, it's generally in a natural setting. And what's important to know about this image is that there aren't any vehicles next to the trail. So a trail like this is similar to what the Indian Head Rail Trail looks like um, for most of its length, surrounded by trees and green space. But the trail facility is able to be used by both pedestrians and bicyclists. So bikes and pedestrians would be sharing the same trail. But like I said before, this would be in a natural setting, so surrounded by green space and trees. This next image is showing a similar type of shared use trail facility, but in a different context. So this would be in an urban context. You can see that there aren't any vehicles right next to the trail. You can also notice that both bikes and pedestrians are sharing the same trail facility here. But in contrast to the previous image, it's in a more urban context. So surrounded by buildings, shops, things like that. This next slide shows two different examples of what are typically called side paths. And as the name might suggest, side paths generally are parallel and adjacent to active roadways. And so in both of these images, you can notice that there are vehicles on the side of each of the trail facilities. But what's important to know about side paths is that they will generally provide some type of physical separation between vehicles and trail users. So the separation could be achieved by installing curbs and a landscape buffer that maybe has trees or grass in it, like the image on the left here. Or it could be, the separation could be achieved by installing kind of like a more robust barrier, like the wooden fencing that's included in the image on the right. And typically side paths they can either be mixed use, so where bikes and pedestrians would share the same facility, or they could be exclusively for bikes with an adjacent sidewalk. So the image on the right is a side path that would have both bicycles and pedestrians sharing the same trail, but the image on the left shows an exclusive bike facility with an adjacent sidewalk. Next, this slide shows two different examples of what are called cycle tracks. And these are sometimes referred to as protected bike lanes. And what's important to note about these two images is that it's a dedicated space for bicycles, but there is some type of physical separation between vehicles and the cyclists using that facility. So it's next to an active roadway, but there's some type of vertical barrier that would hinder a car from traveling into the bike lane. So in the image on the left, that type of physical barrier is a concrete parking block. And in the image on the right, these things are affectionately called armadillos, mostly just because of the contours of that shape. And you'll hear kind of the terms cycle track and protected bike lanes used interchangeably, but generally cycle tracks refer only to two-way bike facilities. So in both of these images, you can see that bikes are going, in both directions. But protected bike lanes could also be one way. So the relationship between them is kind of like the relationship between squares and rectangles, in the sense that all cycle tracks are protected bike lanes, but not all protected bike lanes are cycle tracks. And the barriers, they can vary. Both of these are kind of lower to the ground barriers, but the barriers could be, planters with like flowers and stuff in them. They could even be more robust bollards sometimes. They could be flexible posts, plastic posts, like the one you see here in yellow, or they could even be jersey barriers. It really depends on the context of that facility. This next slide shows two different images of painted bike lanes. And in the United States, generally, we call these conventional bike lanes. And what's important to know about them is that they provide a dedicated space for bicyclists, but that space is outlined using paint and striping on the roadway. So there isn't any type of physical separation that separates bicyclists from vehicles, but there is a dedicated space for bicyclists. And they also might include kind of large buffer areas that are achieved through the striping, but not always. So after running through a couple different examples, we really would like to hear from you through the chat or by sending an email to Beth at her email address here. Of these facility types, which do you prefer to ride on? And this will be helpful for us to know, exactly how are we going to try and situate the trail, what the trail might look like, I guess, in a typical sense. I'm not seeing any comments in the chat. That's okay. But as you think a little bit more about what types of bike facilities you prefer to use, please let us know. But also the survey that we've designed asks similar questions, so you don't have to let us know via email. You could also just make your preferences known by submitting the survey. Thanks, Ed, for chiming in. Ed would prefer a rural trail. So that's helpful to know, because I think one of the things that we really want to know from you is what types of facilities are you most comfortable using, and we'll be able to kind of change the way that we design the trail based on that feedback. So next, I'm going to move on to introducing you to the online survey and the web mapping tool. So Daniel Patterson from Tool Design will teach you how to fill out the online survey and how to use the web mapping tool. And we're asking you to please fill out the survey and add destinations and preferred trail alignments using the web map. And we'll be keeping the survey and the web map open until January 8th of next year. So you have a little bit of time if you want to play around with it. The mapping tool is pretty cool, but it is, I guess, it's somewhat complicated in how it works, so it might take a little bit of time to get familiar with it. And so now I'm gonna hand things off to Daniel, who will explain the survey that we designed for this and how to use the web mapping tool.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. I want to make sure I'm choosing the right one. Go ahead and share. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay. That was a great introduction, Alex. So as noted, we have developed this online platform for public engagement that is based in the web browser. So you can access this from any computer that you have available to you with an internet connection. It also works within a mobile device, although it is best used in a desktop computer. Maps are generally better viewed through that portal. So as you log into this website, you have the survey kind of listed on set on the left, and then the map on the right. There's a set of instructions here on how to use the page, and generally what we intend to use this web page for. There's also some information on here and how to contact Alex if you have any questions. So once you've arrived at the page, take a read through, and there's a Let's Go button that you click, and that engages the first page of the survey. So the survey is 3 pages long, and we have questions that are set up for you that are based around you as a user, your goals for what you would like to see this trail alignment achieve, and some general demographic questions just to make sure that we're pulling a representative group. So you can see here the different questions are kind of laid out one by one. So some general questions: how often do you walk? How often do you bike? These are all pretty. These these are commonly used throughout the internet. These kind of these buttons here, check boxes, drop downs, etc. So read through the questions, submit your answers. This second page here, this is an important page in that it is a place that you can identify how you feel, what the priorities should be with regard to the trail alignments. We've got a question here: rank the following features of shared use trails between 1 and 5 stars, where 5 stars is the most important, 1 star is the least important. In other words, what must a shared use trail have before you consider it? And so kind of setting a priority associated with these different elements will help us build an alignment for the trail as we move forward into the engineering process. So, in the goals page here, there are a couple of questions associated with, what do we want this trail alignment to achieve? And on the last page, there's some demographic questions. There's also an opportunity for you to plug your name and email address in to stay connected to the trail project moving forward. So, are there any questions about the survey at this moment?
You got my email. I sent it I went to Stacy, Beth, and Alex. That as a park ranger with Parks and Planning, I've retired since then, but I helped design trails. And one of the principles we use is the width of the trail from an environmental standpoint. As you can see, there is no impact if it's 19 feet wide or less to allow them mammals and butterflies and plants and birds and everything to cross over in a normal way and carry on with their life.
Yeah, actually, I remember that from my an undergraduate course I took a long time ago. We had this discussion. One of my professors was somebody who focused on that with research, and so there are places for you to put that kind of information into this survey. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us with regard to the project? And that kind of information that's generally hard to target with a specific question.
As you go along doing the survey, you can see, particularly for rural areas, it's very important. You can see whether you can stay less than 19 feet wide. Mm-hmm. That would be a factor that you would ask the surveyors to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard to say exactly what the footprint of the trail might be when it's constructed, but we're planning on having the trail be 12 feet wide, and it would likely include some type of shoulder on either side. So I can't give you a solid answer right now, but I think it's pretty likely that we would stay below 19 feet wide for the whole facility. Excellent. Including the shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you can use this to your bosses as a justification for how you're doing the trail. You could refer to this scientific paper I sent in the email.
Great, yeah, thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. So this is exactly the kind of content we would like to gather at this point in the planning process. So the survey is automatically generated whenever you open up the web page. So after you click the Let's Go button, the survey will be engaged. So after you get to the last page, there's a submit button that you click, and that submits the survey into a database. An online database. I don't know if you saw that just a moment. It actually appeared right here on the very last row, and you could see here, those that those questions that I answered as giving the demonstration were saved in here, and you can see that there's already been some traffic on the page, and you can kind of see how people are inputting their responses. So that's where it's stored. And this is the map after you submit the survey. And Alex discussed that we're looking for places where the trail will be aligned, as well as what it should connect to in your eyes. And there are 2 ways to do that. So there are 2 buttons here that engage a drawing functionality. One is point based, and the other is line based, and it's clear, looking for destinations with the points, and then the line-based one, we're looking for route alignment. So, we're looking for your thoughts on where this should go. It might be that you have strong thoughts about a very specific leg of the trail, and that's the kind of information we would like. And so, kind of to continue the tour before I give a demonstration on how to input that information, we have this legend down here that you can use to toggle layers on and off. The outline of the project is shown here on the map, and you can kind of see up here we have the Indian Head Rail Trail in a thick orange line, and the 3-notch trail down here in a thick blue line, and then a number of other existing facilities and points of interest on the map. And so you can kind of see with this outline that we're looking to connect these two trails here. So when adding destinations and routes, think about this space here and how it can be best utilized to connect these two trails up. And so other data we have on here, again, if you don't want to bother looking at where the parks are, you can turn those off by simply just clicking the legend item. And that goes for everything on here. The Indian Head Rail Trail, the 3-notch trail, the remainder of the shared use paths, the community centers, etc. There's a button up near the top of the sidebar that is generally just instructions on how to use the map. So, as time moves on, if you want a refresher, you can click that button and see how to use the map. And there's one last item here. There's a see what others have shared. You can see that there's been a lot of quite a few lines drawn around here. Looks like there's been a few people who have drawn, but this might need to be cleaned up in the next day or so. But you can kind of get a sense for what the end product will look like. Obviously, those that are they're just straight lines from one to the other will be filtered out. But those that are intricate and show true kind of like a reasonable alignment, those would be the ones that we're looking for as we choose the best alignment for the trail. So you can see what others have shared there. Are there any questions about the map and its setup at this time?
Well, this is George Clark, Tri-County Council of Southern Maryland Transportation Specialist.
Mhm.
Looking at this, this is something the council we have thought for many years about lining the two up, not just for recreational, but for those that are transit dependent that need routes to, say, park and ride lots, to commuter buses and other destinations, to the local transit. And I don't see where you're going to cut through property, which I know quite a bit of a lot of the farmers that you are showing right here would not allow it. And particularly going over the Zakiah Swamp. The
Yeah.
trail must run alongside Route 5, just as the 3-notch trail runs right now, where it ends in Charlotte Hall. And I think that's where you are right now.
Yeah.
That is where really we need to concentrate on and work with. Because you have a park and ride lot in Golden Beach, 2 of them, matter of fact, right there off of Golden Beach Road and Route 5. And you also have a park and ride lot, which is new, in Waldorf, which isn't too far from the Indian Head Rail Trail off of 925 Old Washington Road. And so I'm just looking at what we need to do is not just think about recreational, but we need to think about long-term for those for economically and workforce.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, and one big problem we have, in this area of the world is connecting subnetworks up, so we have this subnetwork on the kind of the east side and then on the west side of the swamp. And, how do you connect across this barrier here? And, oftentimes alignments do go where there's right of way and,
Correct. And there was just a new fort that was founded a 300-year-old fort there at the Sky Swamp. So I don't really know. Maybe Beth might know more about it. What the feds or the states will allow in crossing near that region at the Sky Swamp. I think we will have to follow the Route 5 Leonardtown Road on the side to get past that and move on through Hughesville to get to the St. Mary's route.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there obviously aren't a lot of options in this area. And so, you know, it may be that through this process, we see more comments in, you know, the St. Charles area or down around Hughesville. And what this tool will allow us to do is really fine tune that process. We can, you know, take a very close look at the road network here and draw intricate lines, you know, through the neighborhoods to connect different destinations, or we can, you know, highlight the destinations that we think the trail should connect to, or within these areas here. And so I'll give a quick demonstration on how to layer in a point. So there are two buttons here. Simply enough, just click the button, you know, zoom into the area where you know you're interested in. Just click at that same location. There'll be a Google kind of Street View that will pop up that, you know, you can use to confirm your location. And, you know, perhaps it is that you know of a field or of a park that you would like to have this trail connect to. You can, you know, add your comment in at this point using this button. So, you know, you can kind of just layer in a point, say, you know, connect to this location, submit it, and that comment there then is submitted at that location. And then go back to the legend, and then you can kind of continue and add more destinations. Similarly, with the routing component, you just kind of select a number of points and then click on the final node. In the same way that the point had a survey associated with it, a real short, you know, kind of form, you just kind of add your name, great for exercise, and you know, you can say, looking forward to this trail, you know, and then submit your comment. And then, you know, that comment then is logged. Again, you can kind of see how this gets logged. It saves the spatial data, so we can then use this for future mapping purposes. You can see my comment was saved here, you know, looking forward to this trail. For general exercise, and then my name I input in both places. So, this stays in the same location as where the survey is stored. So this is the tool. Are there any questions on how to use it?
And if once you kind of get into the tool and you start using it, and you have if a question arises, feel free to reach out to me. I think like Daniel had mentioned, my contact information is at the very beginning of the survey. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I'll try and help you out.
Pan in the oven.
I'm sorry.
I think it sounded like a house kitchen comment. So yeah, and
it is dinner time.
Yeah, just to echo this one thing about these maps is you can't break them. You know, you throw all your comments in there where you think the trail should go, what it should avoid, and you know, we'll kind of wrap these up in the next step of the planning process.
May I add again, I'm sorry, George, Tri-County Council, is that when we look at this study, one thing that we lack in both Charles County in Calvert County, St. Mary's, is crosswalks, crosses. And when we look at doing this mapping, the more that we stay closer to the highway, the better chances we are to getting crosswalks built by the state on state highways. Right now, Charles County sits at 23 on the list of getting crosswalks built. You have to be below 20 deaths, sorry to say, for the state to start looking at you. And we don't want to be there at that point. But what I'm getting to is when we look at this study, the closer we are to the highways, we need to add in, where do we need these crosswalks? So not just for pedestrians, but they're for cyclists. And we need to be conscious of that. If we're going to meet up in Charles County.
I think I was unmuted when I was yelling to you about I can't have dinner.
Excuse me, somebody, get your dinner later. But anyway, what I was saying, particularly when you get down from Charles County and the St. Mary's County line with 3-notch trail ends right there at McKay's. Okay, they have a crosswalk, believe it or not, but there's nothing there for Charles County coming from Waldorf. I think, Yolanda, you're on the line. I believe Charles County has only 3 crosswalks in the whole county. Or Beth, you might be able to say, am I correct? That there's only 3 crosswalks, which would help the cyclists as well. If we're going to take the 3-notch trail and the Indian Head Rail Trail to join up, they've got to cross 301 at White Plains. What do we do? And I think we need to put emphasis on that with this study.
Yeah, thanks for that, George. It is, I mean, crossing 301 is a huge obstacle. I think there are probably more crosswalks than just 3, but I know that at least crossing 301, there are very few opportunities to cross 301 in Charles County. I think really
Alex,
the only
I
place.
will, Yolanda, could you verify this for me? I think we have 1 in La Plata. I think there's only 3 in Charles County. There's 12 in Calvert, 6 in St. Mary's, and I think Charles County's got 3 at the max. But
I mean, there's more than 3. You're talking about the major highways.
Yeah, I'm thinking Route 301.
301.
There's, I think, 3 crossings.
Correct.
But I think, George, you bring up a good point. There's only 3 crossings and it's a major arterial through the county. And we're, and whether we had 330 or 300, this is going to be a major facility crossing the largest arterial in the county, and crossing is going to be something we need to showcase.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it may be a great cost in various senses, but it's also a great benefit, because even without thinking about the trail all the way to Hughesville, if we just had a safe separated crossing of 301, that would enable residents on the other side of 301 to have access to the existing part of the Indian Head Rail Trail.
Ed, I noticed, raised his hand.
Yeah, I was just going to pile in on the same thing. I was wondering whether there's any possibility or thought of a pedestrian bike overpass. I've seen these things in other places, and I realize we may not have the population that can justify that kind of expense, but 301 is going to be a problem short of something like that.
Well, Ed, I could tell you, the Tri-County Council, we've been involved with the state in talking about that, and the answer is no. Height, and also where do you put them? And the state's pretty much shut us down. Now, the county may know something more than we know at the council, but we've been told no.
I mean, there's a liability with the highway department. They would not support. I mean, it would take a lot.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Oh yeah, because highways don't otherwise ever cause any deaths. But I mean, aren't these the questions that the feasibility contractor is supposed to answer rather than us, putting out random information?
I think so, but at the same time, it's helpful for us to know what your concerns are, because even though there might be a lot of similarities between what the team at Tool Design, is developing, it's still helpful for us to know what you think is most important.
Thank you, Alex, because I thought that what this meeting was all about.
Yeah, and I mean, I do agree that you may end up spending as much effort on that first mile getting across 301 as you do figuring out the route for the entire rest of the trail.
Right.
Well, the county and this group could figure out the route. Figuring the routes out is what we need to figure out. Getting the state on board is a whole nother subject. And with the budget or what's going on right now, but if we do our homework and do what we should be doing and have it laid out and make the state's job a lot easier, then the battle is coming up with the funding and the okay from the state.
Yes.
I would imagine that crossing 301 would probably we'd be able to tie that in with the whole project itself. So once, we would have to definitely get approval from the state because it's their property, but it would be all part of the review process.
So are there any other outstanding questions about how to use the mapping tool or access the survey? It doesn't seem like it, but like I said before, as you dive into the tool, if there are any questions that you have, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you kind of navigate using that tool.
Is it feasible to use an existing traffic light to cross 301?
I think that's something that the team from Tool would certainly consider. I think it's probably maybe the easiest and least costly, because really all you would have to do is introduce a new pedestrian phase into that signal. So I think one of the things that MDOT struggles with is they're very focused on keeping traffic flow, at the level that it is right now. And so in my experience, they've been somewhat reluctant to introduce new pedestrian signal phases, but that doesn't mean that that will remain in perpetuity.
Alex, this may be in the weeds, but
Mhm.
knowing the Billingsley Road segment has no shoulders currently, do you know how much right-of-way there is beyond the curb?
Off the top of my head, I don't, but that's something that we can see very easily through satellite photos.
Yeah, and then bring that up, we wouldn't even be touching the Billingsley Road section if you were to cross the 3-notch trail. You're coming across at White Plains, hopefully thinking that you guys are heading towards the 925 Old Washington Road section, correct?
I mean, I think when you look at the map, there's two clear options if you're using already public right-of-way, which is to go in parallel Billingsley or to do some sort of improvement to DeMar Road and use that as a low traffic facility that you can put something alongside.
Well, that's what I'm looking at. You come across there at White Plains and you work your way to Del Mar. And then take it through there through St. Charles.
I mean, I do agree with you, George, and I've already put a thing on the map that even even if the trail itself doesn't go up to Billingsley Road at 301, that a spur to connect to 925 is desirable, because in the long range plan, I'd like to also see 925 have some sort of facility added to it that would provide that access to the commuter route and the commuter parking lot for picking up buses.
And that's what I'm looking at. If we look at the new park and ride lot built in Golden Beach by MDOT MTA, they have a bike locker and bike racks already in place. The new park and ride lot built there at 925 and Old Washington Road did not do that. And that's not part of the Charles County, did not have any say on that. That was the state. But we would want to, and that would be on our end at the Tri-County Council to get the state to do so. But I'm looking at that DeMar route past that park and ride lot. Well, first the park and ride lot to DeMar, and then move it on. Well, actually, it would be DeMar to the park and ride lot on 925, from there through St. Charles, and somehow hitting over to Route 5 to run parallel with Route 5 to the Golden Beach park and ride lot, which would meet up right there at McKay's grocery store. If y'all familiar with that area, that's where the 3 Notch Trail ends.
Yeah, and Alex, I don't know if we should say, for the benefit of the tool design folks that aren't local, the park and ride we're talking about is at the intersection of Route 925 and Smallwood Drive, so just north of the boundary that's been drawn.
Yeah, thank
Right,
you, Walt.
yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's also a Van Gogh stop. So I think we have it identified as a local transit stop, but we'll make sure to include that in our analysis.
I don't believe, Alex, that that is a Van Gogh stop. Across the street at the Smallwood 301 county-owned park and ride lot is a Van Gogh stop.
Oh, you're right, George, yeah.
Okay.
And let's see, Yolanda was asking, could the map identify state, county, or federal properties as well as major destinations? I think at this point, we probably aren't going to make, many changes to what the map itself looks like. But if you're interested in having the trail access those types of properties, please make sure to include that in any submissions that you put in.
I was thinking it may be helpful to identify properties where it may be more available for use, private property.
Yeah, and it's certainly what I think is just because Tool has developed this mapping tool in order to help them stay on budget. We don't really want to make too many changes to what the map itself looks like to the end user.
Understood.
So it seems we're kind of at a lull in the conversation. Any questions? So I think if there aren't any burning questions that anybody has right now, I think we maybe move to wrap this meeting up and let you have at the survey and the mapping tool. Like I said before, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And I guess I should say it first, thank you so much for participating. It really is incredibly helpful for us to learn from you about what you think is important for this trail. And I think we had a pretty good discussion. So thank you for that. And thanks for participating. And please also let your friends and family know about this too. The more submissions we get, I think the better our understanding of what your preferences will be. So yeah, please share it far and wide if you can.
Now, Alex, will there be another one of these meetings? I think we need to really have more St. Mary's participation in this
Hmm.
and some of the players, not just the BIAC meeting that we have at the council, but this is great. And I want to thank you for hosting it. And I want to wish everybody a happy holiday. And we'd like to see this happen.
Hmm.
One way or another. We'd like to see it happen.
Yeah, and we will be having another public meeting, and so hopefully, we can get some more participation from St. Mary's. And I think right now we're what we're envisioning for the second public meeting is to have people provide input on a couple different alignment alternatives to choose their favorite.
That's great. Well, please reach out to myself, Yolanda, especially. She has all the contacts down in St. Mary's that's involved in the BIAC. And let's see if we all can work together, bring the public together and make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
And
Alex,
most importantly, we want safety for all.
Right.
And y'all take care.
hey, Alex, since we
Mhm.
seem to have some time, do you have anything that, I'm going to ask this as a general way.
Mhm.
Do you have anything you can say about the possibility that if this study comes up with some difficult sections, but some sections that don't have large issues, that we might be able to move forward with connecting, neighborhoods to the existing trail, even if we can't go all the way to Hughesville on a short time frame?
Mm. That's something we haven't really gotten that far yet. I think, that could be one of the recommendations of the study, kind of a phasing approach for how to construct it and what phases would be best to construct first. But I can't tell you right now exactly, how we would navigate that. But it's a good, your point is well taken.
No, that's a great point you brought up, Walter. I think that's where you start bringing in those presidents of the homeowners associations in St. Charles for those regions that outline around the Regency Stadium and that whole corridor right there. And yeah, we need to bring them on board as well.
Yeah, because connecting the two trails and having a 50-mile long continuous thing, that's good. It's a vision. It gets people excited. But when you look at the map, and as George was just saying, the amount of development that's taken place around the St. Charles Parkway and Billingsley intersection, that's a huge amount of population that now currently has to load up the car and drive 2 or 3 miles to go down to the trailhead. And getting them a direct, safe path to get on the facility would only increase the utility of the existing trail.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. But I think, yeah, we haven't really established like a firm strategy on that. But it's something, thanks for bringing it up because it's something that we need to consider. All right, any other comments or questions before we sign off?
No, I just want to say it's been great, Alex, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for participating, George. Thanks to everyone. Really, I can't really put into words how helpful it is to have your input.
Usually people are telling me to be quiet. I see you all laughing there too.
Hey, Alex, since Yolanda's speaking, and of course Yolanda and I are work together on the BIAC along with people that are members. So if at some point during this study, it's helpful for the information to flow either way, whether the briefing preliminary findings and getting feedback or getting additional input in another forum is helpful to the team, then we can always set up them to be on the agenda at one of the BIAC meetings. Of course,
Well, I was just going to say to you both, Yolanda and Walt, I highly recommend that we bring Alex in and he actually do this presentation at the next BIAC meeting. You'll have your St. Mary's County reps there, and great feedback will come from that.
Sounds like a plan.
Well, we will get back with you on that.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Well, yeah, once again, repeating myself, but thanks everybody for participating. It really is, it's super helpful. So thank you. And yeah, have a good holiday season. Stay warm.
And nice to actually see you in Beth after 9 months.
I know, yeah, it's been a long time.
Happy holidays, everyone.
See you, Stacy.
Alex, I recorded the chat, so we'll have that as I saved the chat.
Perfect. All
so
right.
That's done. So we'll have that with all the other information as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Yolanda. See you later.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Daniel. Great job.
You too.
Yep. And of course, if you ever need to reach out individually, I'm available. So I'll talk to you later whenever you have the next meeting scheduled.
All right. Sounds good, Walt. Good to talk to you.
Take care.
All right. See everyone. I'm going to go eat dinner now.
Bye,
Great job,
everybody.
Alex.
Take care. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That was great.
Good presentation, Alex.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yep, it was
Yep.
great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all
Yep.
the work on the
Guys,
backside,
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah.
We'll talk soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.